All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amy Snyder from the Connect and Communicate Series Planning Committee. Thank you for joining us for this presentation, Mapping Your Journey, Steps for Beginning a Librarianship Diversity Residency. The discussion will be recorded and made available to the Pennsylvania Library Association College and Research Division members through the PALA website and also on the CRD blog. For this discussion, you will only need a headset or speakers. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat box at the bottom right throughout the discussion, and we'll attempt to include your questions as appropriate during the discussion or at the end. We'll also do our best to assist participants with technical issues. Please post those issues in the chat box as well. Mapping Your Journey, Steps for Beginning a Librarianship Diversity Residency is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Library Association College and Research Division's Connect and Communicate series. I'd like to thank the CRD Board for supporting the Connect and Communicate initiative and the other Connect and Communicate Planning Committee members. Sarah Pike, Erin Burns, Amanda Avery, Ryan Settler, Ronali Sioko, and I'd also like to acknowledge PALA for allowing us to bring this discussion to you through Zoom. Thank you, Erin, for doing our closed captioning for today's session. We'll be keeping track of attendance today, so please type the number of attendees at your location if more than one of you is watching. That way we have an accurate number. And finally, I'd like to thank and introduce our panelist, or our presenter for today's event. Amanda M. Lefwich, MS-LS, is the Online Learning Librarian, Diversity Fellow at Montgomery County Community College. Lefwich earned her MS-LS from Clarion University of Pennsylvania. She is the creator of @Mindful in LIS, a Twitter account dedicated to mindful practice and techniques for LIS professionals. She has presented and written on diversity, equity, and mindfulness since 2017. She's written articles for LibParlor, Letters to a Young Librarian, and INALJ. She tweets at the LibMaven and Mindful in LIS. And with that, I will turn it over to our presenter.
Thank you so much. So again, my name is Amanda Leftwich, and I'm going to discuss mapping your journey, steps for beginning a library residency or fellowship. I just want to note that the original idea and outline for this presentation was created with Lauren K. Jackson, but the following presentation and handouts are my own. So let's get started. So a little bit about me more. I'm the Online Learning Librarian and Diversity Fellow. That's my actual title. It's pretty long. If you're looking for me, please contact me by email. And I'm at Montgomery County Community College in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. So the purpose of this webinar is to give you, the listener, an overview of residencies and fellowships with the tools to make them successful. You should learn what to expect, how to identify essential themes, create your own goals, and a timeline to get started. So I have a presentation outline for you as well, in case anyone needs to know when to unmute the webinar, if you're looking for a particular topic. So we're just going to go over the of residencies and fellowships, goal setting, identifying central themes and best practices, a checklist for current and future fellows and residents, discussion of challenges, final thoughts and questions. So part one. So basically this is just an overview of residencies and fellowships. And I added a little comment there. It says, what is a resident? Wait, you aren't an intern. I chose this title because some residents and fellows are confused with interns, but we'll get more into that. And we are not interns. Residents and fellows are professionals. We have a library degree from an accredited library school accredited by the ALA organization, right? So in case you're new to residency or fellowships, residents are not interns, we're professionals. We have library degrees, but we're looking for a bit more experience in certain areas and levels within librarianship. A requirement usually for these positions require basically a lack of experience. So they're looking for new professionals or recent graduates from library schools. The positions are usually academic, but not always. Some residencies have a diversity initiative behind them, If so, the institution, in order to be recognized by the ACRL Diversity Alliance, pays dues and have a commitment of at least 2 years within that institution. These residents and fellows are temporary or on visiting status librarians within the position or within the institution and their position. Most are supervised by a coordinator, but again, not always. They can be on tenure track, include rotations, and have other requirements set by the individual institution. So one way that Monco is a bit different is that they have their own fellowship program, and I'll get more into that as we go into the presentation. But I just wanted to read this quote to you because I found it pretty interesting. One way Monco promotes diversity is through its Faculty Diversity Fellowship Program. This program promotes minority scholars in the early stages of their careers with the opportunity to develop their teaching skills at Monco while they continue to work or complete their terminal level degrees. Faculty fellows receive mentoring from colleagues, and in return, they participate as mentors in Monco's Minority Student Mentoring Initiative, or MSMI. So one of the most promising places to work is a study conducted by the National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development, and also Diverse, which is a magazine, and it's called Diverse Issues in Higher Education. This award is given to institutions that not only support diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also have a commitment to inclusive environments. So I was aware of the mentoring program for myself, right? So all of us have to go through a mentoring program, but I was not aware of my participation in the MSMI program until I started working on this webinar. So I've worked on my professional development throughout my tenure here and will continue to do so in lieu of obtaining another degree, although the college does offer a generous benefit for continuing education, which is great. So a little bit about the history of the fellowship at MC3. The program started an effort to diversify faculty at MC3 in 2008. It started in the Arts and Humanities Department, and I'm actually working with the first ever fellow right now for one of her classes, which has been really great. I've met a few of the other fellows as well, so people who were fellows since the program started and are still here in full-time positions, which has been really awesome. They're really great people and working on a lot of initiatives to the college. So the history of the program is loosely based on the need of the individual department for an additional hire. So they needed someone in the department, either someone retired or they noticed that they just needed a new hire for whatever reason. Most fellows are hired for 1 year and are temporary faculty with full-time benefits. Anyone with faculty status here are at tenure track and can join the union at any time. So you're protected by the union here. Usually, if it benefits both parties, 2 to 3 months prior to the end of the fellowship, a new agreement is generated. You need to interview again. It truly depends on the need of the college. So there are also no rotations here for any of the fellows. And currently there's about 6 or 8 of us for this academic year. So we go August to August. And all of the fellows are given mentors outside of their departments for the entirety of their fellowship. So let's talk a bit about my fellowship. So MC3 is the first community college added into the ACRL Diversity Alliance. And I'm the first fellow in libraries and academic support, however, not the first on campus. I've been placed here for 2 academic years because of the agreement with the ACRL Diversity Alliance. So I'm really happy about that. The hope is that when the fellowship ends, we'll be hired back as full-time permanent non-teaching faculty. I might have to interview again. No one's really made that clear. But what has been clear or has been hinted at is that they would like me to stay once my 2 years is up. So I'll be done in August of 2020. I've tried to include some of my responsibilities. Of course, this is not everything, but I didn't want to read through my entire job application, basically. So a big part of it is diversifying the collection. So collection development, right? Working in the graphic novel collection and the general collection. And I was given a very small budget to sort of diversify that collection or those collections. I've been added into instruction and reference. There are only 5 librarians here, including myself. So I was added to the reference schedule first and shadowed all the other librarians for about 2.5 months before I was added into the teaching schedule. This semester, I've been added as a research support librarian role or embedded librarianship work. And 3 of my other colleagues do this as well in conjunction with their liaison duties. And duties as assigned. So this includes many things, but really focuses on committee work as a representative of the library, curating our digital display, and helping our newly formed assessment team via faculty success. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Again, I still have to work on my own professional development goals, and these were all created by myself, not by the college or the department. Again, we'll discuss that a little bit later. And if my position will continue. So I'm not sure if it'll continue, but I'm enjoying the fellowship, and I wanted to help someone else figure out how they could enjoy theirs as well. So let's talk a little bit about expectations versus reality. So on the left, I've noted my expectations, and then on the right is the reality of what this position is, right? So for example, I wanted to know about my coordinator meetings, who I was working with on a one-to-one basis, my rotations, set responsibilities, a mentor inside my department, goals and frameworks, and I didn't think that I would be allowed to do any committee work, right? And then I got a really large reality check, right? And I was surprised by the lack of my expectations manifesting. But I realized I never once questioned or asked about my fellowship and what it would be. I signed my contract, quit my former position, and walked through the door with high hopes. I had no idea what my position entailed, who I was reporting to, or what my job tasks would be daily. This led me to create my own set of goals, responsibilities, and tracking system for my residency. So let's talk more about that. So part 2, goal setting, identifying central themes and best practices. This is important to note because you need to know your role in order to do your job. If you don't know the expectations, you'll never meet the requirements for the position. So I just wanted to have some questions for you. So what do you hope to gain? What are you gaining from a residency? Do you need instruction experience, reference experience, general library experience? What are you looking for? I think before you even interview, figure out what you want from a position like this, because they vary by institution. How will this position help you in the future? Are you just getting this position because you didn't like your last job or your current job? Are you hoping to use this position to grow in some way professionally? Have a clear definition of what life will be like after this position is complete. Most libraries do not offer a temporary position or a permanent position after it's over. You'll need to think about what you hope to gain in order to find a great position after the residency is over. You really want to think about the commitment as well. A large percent of residencies are 2 to 3 years. Are you willing to relocate and stay in the same place that long? Do you even want to stay that long if the position isn't what you imagined? And is that long enough for you to make a difference? I mean, 2 to 3 years seems like a long time, but it really does fly. Diversity initiatives. Can you see yourself being a mentor or being called to be the diverse voice? It doesn't always happen, but as Jason Austin mentions in his writings, some residents have been added to diversity committees without any consent prior. How will you handle this? How will you be able to work with this? Mission of the college. The mission or goals of the college may not always align with your own. How do you handle that? Can you follow something you don't necessarily believe in? So if it's a Christian college, can you follow all of the goals of that college? These questions should lead you to create your own goals and strategies while in the position and start to think about your position, not just the position itself or obtaining the position. So it's a little blurry, but these are some of the goals that I have created for myself while I've been here. It's a large list, but it's something I wanted to write down as a way of organizing my thoughts and strategies for completing tasks. Items highlighted in green have been completed, yellow are in process. So this is in sections so that you can see it, but you can generate or complete your own list based on your own needs of your position at your residency. So I have mine split into residency goals, professional development, college outreach, and frameworks to get all of those things done. You could generate something based off your own residency needs, but hopefully this chart gives you some idea of where to start. You'll also need to keep track of what you're doing. So for example, under my professional development goals, since that's a big part of my residency, one thing I really wanted to work on was to start to publish a little bit more. So you can see that those are the first 3 things on my list. So those are the first, first and most important things to me and for this residency to get done. So tracking system. So this is my tracking system and my project's completed sheet. So things are broken down by month completed, project, hours, and dates. I've mentioned earlier that I'm on tenure track, so I wanted to keep a clear listing of projects in order to just add this into my e-portfolio for tenure when the time comes. As you can see, I've tried to be as detailed as possible, and I've provided links when applicable. This is a living document. It changes and grows with me. It's also been helpful when I've needed to update my resume because I can just copy and paste. I recommend that you try something like this in order to stay organized. You'll be asked to join, add, and contribute to multiple projects in and outside of your institution, which is great. But if you don't keep track of it, what's the point? Try to stay as organized as possible for yourself and for your resume. So you can see October was a really busy month for me. I worked on a lot of college outreach during that month. So I co-curated a digital display with a colleague, and that was really successful, and that led to a bigger party for the students celebrating Dia de los Muertos. I started shadowing also in that month. So I just wanted to keep a clear listing of what I've done each month in case anyone ever asked me at the college what was going on. Because it seems like I'm not busy sometimes and really busy other times. So I just wanted to keep a detailed list for myself. So central themes. Okay, so this is the central theme created by the ACRL Diversity Alliance. Okay, fellows and residents are expected to gain experience that they hadn't previously obtained, diversify the workplace and collections, further the institution's mission and goals. But what is your place in this? One person cannot solely diversify the workplace nor the collection. You'll need support from your colleagues and other diverse temporary hires to do so, and permanent hires. Although this is a common theme, you don't have to be the sole driver of DEI in your department, institution, or field. So you want to try to identify the themes within your residency, maybe even in your department. So let's go down the list. Some questions to identifying themes. You want to think about your institution. Does the institution have a clear commitment to DEI? Does the library? Are they a member of the ACRL Diversity Alliance? What does that mean to the library? How have they shown commitment to the ACRL Diversity Alliance? Is there a union in place? What role does the union have in supporting the library and in supporting you, right? How will you be graded for tenure? You want to think about that. How does the faculty's mission work against the mission of your residency? Is there a department that's dedicated to faculty success? Finding out the answers to these questions will assist you in figuring out the themes of your residency. So for example, MC3 has invested in DEI through their own fellowship program, separate from ACRL. This is an investment that is shared and supported by individuals at the college because of continued support through professional development, being shared with the fellows, mentorship available, and the availability to be hired as a temporary employee after completion of the fellowship program. A larger commitment is shown through my hiring by the library and by them extending the fellowship an extra year. I'm on tenure track and will have to submit for tenure if I'm hired back a few months after my fellowship ends. Faculty success, which is a big department here, shows their support for faculty by including fellows in all avenues. So we are allowed to attend conferences that are paid by the college. We're allowed to present workshops to the larger faculty, to students, to whomever we like. So it's really an investment to show that we can share our work out, right? So a central theme in my fellowship is support. Support of myself and my work, support of the students, support of the mission through actions, not just words. Can you easily identify themes in your own institution? So I have a bit of a checklist for you to use. Okay, so one thing I really hope that you take out of this is that you need to ask questions. Question everyone from the interview to when you're hired to when you're a year in, 2 years in and about to leave. Just keep asking them questions, okay? So during the interview process, you really want to ask what the responsibilities of job are. If you are coming, for example, myself, I came from a public library. I had a lot of experience in collection development and really didn't have as much of an interest in doing that again. And here that was a bigger part of my position, but I hadn't really asked about that, right? So you'd want to ask, what am I going to do during this fellowship or residency? What are my job duties going to look like? Is this available for tenure track? And if it is, what does that look like when my fellowship ends? Will I have to start all over again? Or can I just submit for tenure when my fellowship ends? Will you hire me back, right? If a big part of your job is professional development, what does that look like? What does the support look like for that? How will you be able to get that work done? It's not just saying, oh yeah, professional development is a part of your job. You have to really ask how they'll help you develop, whether it's through funding, hours that you can set aside during your work week to complete that. What does that look like? As you're hired, you'd really want to talk about what the training schedule looks like. A lot of times the onboarding process for residencies and fellowships are very sporadic, right? You could have 1 month or 1 day where you're doing everything, and then you have a week of nothing really to do. So you want to ask what that onboarding process looks like. If you're going to have rotations, what does that look like? How many months will you be in a certain department? What are the departments, if you don't know? If you're at a really large institution, what does that look like? You want to also start to ask about the historical knowledge of the institution, because that will really help you figure out your place within the institution. If diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, are now or recently a part of their focus, what does that really mean for you? Is it just like a flash in the pan thing, or is this a shown commitment to the college? You also want to start creating your goals after you're hired. So another one. So I had a monthly checklist as well, if you're not tired of checklists by now. When you start, you want to learn more about your position. You want to try to meet as many people as you can, right? And have your boss or your coordinator, if you have them, introduce you to people. Maybe try to meet people for coffee, get to know them, get to know what they do. That's going to be important to the support of your residency. 30 days in, really have an understanding of what your position is if you can. Start looking into professional development funding, because a big part of these residencies and fellowships are you presenting somewhere else. You know, what does that funding look like for you? You really shouldn't be paying out of pocket for anything, in my opinion, whatever. So 60 days, you want to start working on your own goals, right? What does that look like now that you've been in for a while? How can you really get your own goals started? And you'll see throughout, I've put update your resume. You just want to keep doing that as well. You want to make sure everything is current or fresh, just in case you have to give it to someone when you're presenting. Sometimes they want to see your resume. 90 days, start reflecting on your work. What are some common themes that you're starting to notice in your position? 120 days, think about some leadership roles that you can take within your department and your institution. 1 year, maybe think about all the things that you've done that first year. Think about presenting that at a larger institution, a larger conference. So some best practices. Be prepared to do some legwork when it comes to building goals and frameworks to complete those goals. It's your fellowship or residency. Feel free to make it your own, depending on what you need after the residency is completed. Don't be afraid to shoot for the stars. Reflect on your work. I can't say this enough. You need to keep track of your work, your failures, accomplishments, your feelings, and reactions. This will help you develop your own research and develop your own goals. Find a mentor that you trust in and outside of your department. Think about setting something up in your institution if they don't have something like this already. Also, be open to being a mentor. You have learned something and you can share that with someone else. Think about contributing to a portion or a section within your college or university. This will give you a better understanding of central themes and the mission of the college or university. Think about ways you'll contribute outside of the university or college. Maybe host a webinar, a chat, or present your own research. Last but not least, be open and flexible, but not a pushover. If something doesn't feel right to you or you're not interested in it, mention it to your supervisor or coordinator. The position is yours and you have to make it work for you. Alrighty, so I've given you a lot of information here. So let's breathe. Remember that these are guidelines for a fellowship or residency. Please take what works for you and leave the rest. Don't feel pressured to have it all figured out your first few months of your residency or fellowship. We're all still learning together. I also have a discussion of some challenges that I faced. There's not very many, but I wanted to mention it just to show that it's not all grins and giggles. So I'm the only fellow in my department. As I've mentioned, I'm the only fellow in my department. Sometimes working alone on initiatives and projects can be difficult without feedback from someone who's at my level. Keep in mind that with these newer residency positions popping up, you may be the only one, not only in your department, but also at the college or university. I have no coordinator, so due to the contract here, the librarians can report only to a dean or interim dean. Therefore, I couldn't have a coordinator. I report directly to the dean, which in the beginning was a bit scary, but became normalized as I began to know her and as we began to have conversations, right? Figure out who you'll be reporting to early on to avoid any stress. I have no official mentor within the department, but I have been working closely with the information literacy librarian here, which has been great. I've been learning a lot from her, and she's a great unofficial mentor. You'll need to find that support system for yourself. Choose wisely. So communication about the position. My fellowship has been a bit loosey-goosey. It's been up to me to select my own projects outside of the reference and instruction schedule. If you can work like this, that's great. But if you can't, have a clear framework to provide your employer so that you have a bit more structure in your day. I've heard from people within the cohort of the ACRL Diversity Alliance that this is common. So just be aware of that. And free time, there's a lot of free time. So you might have to try to structure your own day. Don't wait for them to structure it for you. And one way you can fill up the time in that day is to work on initiatives for the college. That'll fill up your time. So challenge with service. We do not have a publish or perish culture here, which honestly is not a huge problem. It does take the stress off, but I enjoy writing and researching, right? So while it's not needed, it's not really promoted internally when I do it, and no one's really keeping track of it besides myself. Academic Affairs does share our workout sometimes at their dean meetings, but it's not always. You'll need to think about what this will mean after you leave the residency if your position is not renewed, right? You don't want to go from a non-publish or perish culture to one that's highly active. You'll need to figure out how to share your research externally and keep track of it. Another, not big issue, but just a challenge. So service to the college is a big portion of tenure here. It's about 80% of the weighted measurement towards tenure. So I've always worked at institutions where it's the opposite. So it's taken some time to get used to, but I've started to include more workshops and initiatives to the college in the work that I do. So for example, I've joined a new committee that was formed here, and I attended a conference on behalf of the college that really had nothing to do with librarianship, but they wanted someone to go, and I volunteered to go, which was actually pretty great. So moving forward, you just want to keep in mind that fellowships and residencies are constantly being researched, studied, and assessed. What's happening today in a position may not be applicable in another year or another 2 years, and really varies by location. Be willing to make your own steps and your own goals for your own journey. So some final thoughts. There is no extra special sauce for your position. Make mindful choices for yourself during this time. Find what works for you. If it works for you, great. If not, find ways to adjust, because you're going to have to. It's a 2-year commitment, sometimes 3. Find ways to de-stress. Don't make it your own mission or goal to accomplish everything in 1, 2, or 3 years. Institutional changes come from the collective working together. You won't and shouldn't feel that you are personally responsible for change at your institution. Remember to take your breaks, your vacation time, your personal days. You should still be considered a full-time person, so you get all of those benefits. Remember to take them. Focus on your own professional development goals and personal growth during this period. How would you like to personally develop? How can the institution help you do that? Or how can your position help you do that? And remember to enjoy the process, right? You're never going to be a resident or fellow again, so enjoy the ride. Go to conferences, network, and grow as much as you can during this time. So I've included some further readings. You definitely want to check out the ACRL Residency Interest Group, or RIG, ACRL RIG. They're really great. They have a lot of information on there. They're helpful. They host their own chats and webinars. So you just want to get familiarized with them, especially, I think, and some more citations for you. So I just want to say thank you to PALA for letting me do this. It's a great opportunity and great experience. I am so grateful. Thank you very much. Jessica Dye for helping me with my grammar mistakes. I love you, girl. Erica Burns for letting me work on this. Thank you. Larissa Gordon and Michelle Riali for suggesting the topic of this webinar. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Question.
All right, at this point, if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat box. If you haven't done so already, if you're in a room with multiple people, if you could add that number to the chat box just so we know how many people were here today.
This is Erin. I'm also going to suggest if you want to, since there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people putting anything into the chat, you can unmute yourself and ask a question that way. But you don't have to.
Yep. We have a question. Do you find yourself struggling with deciding on projects because of your time-limited status? For example, long-term projects.
It's a good one. Not really. I've sort of not created a long-term project yet, so it hasn't come up yet. And anything that has been a sort of long-term thing, the librarians work together. We work really closely together since there's only 5 of us. So we all take a portion of it, and then whatever is left is left. I find that a lot of times at a community college, a lot of things are just going to be a long-term project, and we just leave that one till later. So that hasn't been an issue yet, but I can see how it would be for some people.
Amanda, I have a question, and I apologize if I didn't digest this when you were first talking, but how did you find the residency program, and how did you end up at Montgomery Community College? Like, how did that process work?
So thinking back, let's do it. I think my mentor sent it to me. I think that's the way that I saw it. And I just applied like I would a regular job. It was on the job posting.
Okay. Thanks.
I know that ACRL rigged like a job bank sort of thing. So if you're looking for something, you can definitely go there. And I know that they do tweet out job positions. So definitely follow them.
Thank you. Oh, and we got the link shared as well.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yes, and someone said RIG has a listserv.
It's a listserv, yep.
And you can post jobs there as well.
Yep.
Well, you can still type and think of questions, but I'm going to go ahead and post our survey link. So when you have a chance, we appreciate that when you fill out our survey to let us know your thoughts about the presentation. And then there's also a spot on there to suggest future programs, or if you have an interest in presenting, there's contact information there as well. I'm also going to share, hopefully Erin's cool with that, I'm going to share Erin's email address in case you want to reach out to her directly, since she's the chair of our planning group.
Amanda, would you be willing to share your slides with us?
Sure.
Thanks.
And as a reminder, the recording of this presentation will be available on the PALA members part of the website next week, and you also will get a link to it that you can share. So if there are people who couldn't be here today that you think would benefit from this information, feel free to share that. Well, I'm not planning to go anywhere right away, but I just want to take a minute while we're kind of hanging out waiting for questions to thank everyone for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank Amanda for presenting for us. And again, the surveys in the group chat.
This is Erin. I think since I don't see too many other questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording now.
Sounds like a great plan.
Sounds good.